All right, what's going on, everybody? We are live on the channel once again. Today is August the 9th. JB Wins is here. Dogon SS is here. And in typical fashion, we have a story to start off with in the Celebrity Wire, courtesy of our good friend Pete Davidson. So, the reason why I like to talk about stuff like this is because I think that stories in the pop culture celebrity world, such as this, can give us a blueprint or a template on how to make better decisions as individuals. I do think that in this day and age, we're getting to a point where, um, the things that happen in the pop culture world, I personally think that there's a trickle down effect. And we've gotten to the point where, courtesy of social media and the accessibility of some of these public figures and these high profile individuals, the masses, if you will, have started to take cues from what goes on in social media troll pop culture world. And so now everyday people walking around in regular society are emulating the behaviors and doing what they see some of these people do because they sort of perceive it to be what is normal. And so anytime we can look at a situation like what happened with Mr. Pete Davidson, we can say, hey, man, maybe there's a better way to do this, especially when we're talking about relationships, because as we all know, relationships are kind of in a weird, wonky state at the moment for everybody, all across the board. So for anybody who isn't aware, Pete Davidson was in a relationship with Kim Kardashian, the originator of thought culture, in my opinion. And recently, the relationship dissolved. Now, for anyone who hasn't been keeping up with this, Kanye West, who used to be married to Kim Kardashian, he's a bit of an erratic individual. And so throughout the time that Pete Davidson was with Kim Kardashian, Kanye West was doing his best job to troll their relationship and make it as uncomfortable as possible in ways that he only can see fit. And so he put out, the game put out a song with Kanye earlier this year called Easy, where he was talking about God saving him from a crash to whoop Pete Davidson's ass. He throughout the course of the relationship, he would call Pete Davidson. There were certain names that he'd call him and whatnot. So, needless to say, it's been a rocky relationship history for Pete Davidson and Kim Kardashian, and Kanye has a bit to do with that. So recently, that relationship between Pete Davidson and Kim Kardashian ended, and what has come out in lieu of that is this story that Pete Davidson is reportedly seeking, quote, trauma therapy to help cope with the negativity of Kanye's online harassment. So this is an article from BuzzFeed. And as we can see here, it says, just when we thought Kim Kardashian and Kanye West might finally be seeing eye to eye, things just got a little more complicated. As I'm sure you've already heard, Kim and her boyfriend, Pete Davidson, broke up last week after 9 months of dating. Soon after the news surfaced on Friday evening, fans turned their attention to Ye, who throughout the duration of the highly publicized relationship made it abundantly clear that he had hopes of rekindling his and Kim's marriage. On Monday, Ye eventually gave fans the reaction they had been waiting for, posting on Instagram to mark the death of Skeet Davidson, Skeet being the name he began using in reference to Pete when he first started posting about the comedian on the platform back in February. And so this is the post that Kanye put on his Instagram: Skeet Davidson dead at age 28. Apparently that post was live on Kanye's Instagram for about 4 hours before he took it down. I'm not exactly sure why he took it down, but he took it down. So, trying to skip down to the section where Pete Davidson is going through trauma therapy. But it says, on Monday, a source informed people that Pete has been in trauma therapy since the start of April, in large part due to Ye's threatening posts throughout February and March. The attention and negativity coming from Kanye and his antics is a trigger for Pete, and he's had to seek out help. The insider revealed, adding, moving forward, he just wants to focus on his career. All right, so there you have it. Sorry about that, wrong button. So there you have that there. Pete Davidson seeking trauma therapy as a result of Kanye's online harassment of him and his relationship with his ex-wife, Kim Kardashian. A lot of K's, a lot of words and labels and all of that kind of stuff. So what's your take on Pete Davidson and him seeking out trauma therapy after his relationship with Kim Kardashian ended?
How can I say this? All right, in today's social climate where we're dealing with, mental health being such a hot button, mental health is a real thing. So I don't want to be in the frame or in the ballpark of me mocking somebody dealing with mental trauma. But this situation to me, I feel like this is typical trollish behavior. This is just from Pete Davidson, that is. And when you're dealing with a troll who's being trolled, they're going to wiggle out of their little hole and troll some more. And I think this situation here is him trying to find a way to get a victory out of this, because he took a pretty big L. An L in the sense that, it didn't last very long. I think she said something like he was boring or some other stuff. And now here's Kanye, just dunking on him as well. So I felt like he had some level of, I don't know, let me try to save face here. I think it's just more of a card to play more than actually dealing with, trauma. But when you're on the stature of a Pete Davidson, and the whole world knows your business, and the whole world knows that you got dumped, and then the whole world sees the ex-boyfriend dunking on you, it gets a little embarrassing. So no one wants to end up on a poster. So I think this is him trying to defend himself in some type of, strange type of way. So how do you feel about it?
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and preface my comments as well by saying I'm not trying to critique the mental health angle of it. I like to give that part of it the benefit of the doubt. And some of the work that he's done in the past, like I watched the movie that he made, The King of Staten Island or something like that. It's a movie that he wrote that he was also starring in. He has there's some parts in his history that validate him sometimes experiencing periods of his life in which his mental health is compromised. So I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt in that regard. However, if you are an individual who at times may experience periods in which your mental health is compromised, it makes sense to not enter into a situation that can exacerbate your mental health complications. So I think that this is a cautionary tale for, on the surface, people being smart about listening to the little voice in your head that tells you that this might not be something that you need to get yourself involved in, given how vulnerable in certain respects you might be. So if you are somebody who deals with mental health problems, dysfunctional relationships can exacerbate your mental health challenges. And so getting into a dysfunctional situation might not really be the best thing in the world. So I think this is a cautionary tale for people to do a better job of trusting that inner voice and listening to it. Because a lot of people nowadays, and I put myself in that boat, I'm not a perfect person. I think we all do this. I think a lot of us know better, and you get to a certain point when you're old enough and you've reached a certain level of maturity where you do know who you are. Right. And so I think when you have discovered who you are and you're comfortable with that knowledge, it also is a good practice to listen to the little voice in your head that says, hey, you know who you are, and you know this isn't the type of situation that would be beneficial for you given the knowledge of who you are. So it's best to not enter into such a situation. Now, that's the surface level angle of it for me. The more deeper angle for me is for men. And this is more of a relationship angle. So a while back, Melanie King made a video where she was talking about how, dating today is a bit out of whack, at least in some part, because there's a lot of women out there who have a delusional sense of entitlement about things that they deserve in life and in relationships. And because they have this sense of entitlement about themselves, they are reluctant to focus on things like self-improvement. So, you'll run into a lot of women who think that they're perfect the way they are and don't need to work out. You'll run into a lot of women who think that they are perfect the way they are and don't need to eat better. You'll run into a lot of women who think they are perfect the way they are and don't need a work ethic. You'll run into a lot of women who think they are perfect the way that they are and don't need to prioritize being better in terms of being a nurturer or having certain domestication skills. And she was saying that a lot of these women are delusional, and that's why they fail in relationships, because they fail to understand the importance of self-improvement and how no matter how good you are, self-improvement is never something that anyone is above. And my argument in response to what Melanie King was saying was, well, that might be true, but the reason why a lot of women out here have that sense of entitlement about themselves is because men have given them that. Because a lot of us as men are so desperate to be in relationship with a type of woman from a physical standpoint that we will let a lot of our sensibilities when it comes to some of those intangibles slide in order to get with at the time that we recorded that video. I said that we will let a lot of our sensibilities slide in order to get with a bad bitch, because in our current culture it's all about the bad bitch. That's what you hear in the music. That's what you see on social media, on all forms of new media. That's what you see on YouTube. That's what you listen to in podcasts. It's in all the entertainment, the movies, the TV shows. It's bad bitch this, bad bitch that. So my argument was that there's a lot of men out there who are being conditioned socially to covet the acquisition of a bad bitch and let everything else slide. And when you let everything else slide, you, in a sense, become a slave to vagina. And as a slave to vagina, you'll take what you can get if she looks good enough, and you'll forego all of that stuff that you think is important when you really don't actually think it's important. You just want the bad bitch. And so I think it's important that a lot of guys understand the importance of not being a slave to vagina, because you as a man being a slave to vagina, you are the originator of this dynamic. And women will learn how to acquiesce and get self-improvement in check if they know that they are going to have to maintain a certain standard that is demanded by at least a larger portion of men. And so I am reminded of that with Pete Davidson. I kind of feel like Pete Davidson looked at Kim Kardashian and the opportunity to be with what is the mega thought that is Kim Kardashian, and how she looks and her sex appeal. And he might be a guy with certain sensibilities that in an ordinary world or situation he wouldn't want to compromise. But when the idea or the prospect of being with Kim Kardashian came up, he became a slave to vagina. And so he willfully entered into a very toxic and dysfunctional domestication situation with Kim Kardashian. Because well before he got into the relationship with her, there was already a lot of public stuff out there in the world about how toxic the dynamic between him and Kanye was. So you know these things and you decide to go into this relationship with her anyway. And I cannot surmise that he did that for any reason other than in that moment he became a slave to vagina because he wanted to be with Kim Kardashian that bad. And so now you did that against your better judgment, and now you're seeking quote unquote trauma therapy, whatever that even means. And so I think that a lot of guys running around out here who live their lives like this, who live in the social media troll world, who live for the bag in order to get a bad bitch, who live their lives in such a way that you're all about following the IG model or now the TikTok influencer, and liking all those posts and always being in the comments, lurking, trying to get women like this attention. A lot of these women are involved in highly dysfunctional situations. And so you have no one to blame but yourself when you get involved in situations like that. And this is a lesson to a lot of you dudes out here to do a better job of not becoming victim to being a slave to vagina. So that was my take.
Yeah, I didn't think of that angle, but yeah, it makes sense. I can rock with that. And the thing is with Pete Davidson is, I was more or less hanging out with the just looking at how or why he would react in such a way, or why he would say that, oh yeah, I'm going to trauma therapy, blah blah blah. But when Kanye and Kim were going through their whole, faux pas, he was right there, front row center. Oh yeah, I'm in your wife's bedroom, or
right, yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things where, again, this is like, throwing stones and hiding your hand kind of thing. And to me, this plays right in line with a troll. This is real trollish behavior. And so I would see these guys. So in high school, so elementary school, I did my thing. No issue there when it came to be an academic student. I was a scholar. All right. Then middle school, all right, things got a little social. And, trying to be so academically inclined from the area I was growing up in, all right, it got you on the wrong side of the roast table. So I didn't want to get roasted anymore. So I started to peer over into the class clown, making jokes area, just so I could survive in middle and high school. All right. In my time of dealing with class clowns, because there'd be times where we're class clowning together, it's better to have a partner.
Yeah.
Because at that point, it's not just you that's, causing all the chaos in class. Some days, it's a host type of situation. You just pass it off if, hey man, not today, man. And so, so when I would be trolling with other trolls, what I realized was I wasn't really a troll. So I was trolling a teacher because for social dynamic reasons, but I didn't come from the stock of people who grew up and genuinely troll because that's what they know. So when I was hanging out with these people, I was like, oh, you don't have an off button. You don't know when to stop joking. So your jokes at the teacher isn't because you're just trying to you just don't know when to not do this.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I'm not that guy. Mine is very calculated. Mine is just to make sure that the pretty girls in class laugh and that the bully people leave me alone. You're genuinely doing this because you don't, you're just a clown.
Yeah.
And so this Pete Davidson guy comes off to me as a genuine clown. And that there's nothing you can really do to pinpoint his intent outside of the fact that he cries wolf all the time. So you never know what's real or what's not when you're dealing with somebody like him. So that's why I said I'm not trying to make, light of mental health. He looks like he suffers from mental health.
He does.
Just look at him. So I'm not trying to make fun of the guy, but all I'm saying is this card here is a sympathy card of, hey, finally, he's taking an L. So he plays the sympathy card for everybody out there. Hey, man, my mental health is under attack by an internet bully.
Yeah.
And for those people who get triggered by headlines and triggered by whatever, now they're going to look at Kanye as bad guy, big bad wolf. And Mr. Davidson, the guy that said he was in bed with his wife, is now somehow the victim.
The victim, yeah.
I don't know how this works, but this is the internet, and it's 2022, so.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think you're right. The way that I see it is, so when we talked about the Brittany Renner Rolling Loud thing, was that last week? Whenever we did that, you brought up the delineation between the real world and social media troll world. So like in social media troll world, that dynamic is 100% applicable. But I think in the real world, we look at Pete Davidson similar to the way that we looked at that guy who got that water splashed on him by Brittany Renner. And we say, Pete Davidson, you played yourself. You're embarrassed. This is embarrassing. You're embarrassing yourself. Right. So now when it comes to him, I don't care about whatever, because, you know, he lives in the troll world, and I do believe that he is a clown as well. So for all I know, he is utilizing mental health as a weapon in order to make himself a victim so that he can come out on the better end of this situation. Similar to the way that people use the race card or the LGBTQ card or any one of these cards now that get employed nowadays, because no one will dare say anything against, when you invoke the use of one of these tools, no one would dare say anything against you, because it's too much of a social faux pas to challenge anyone's assertion that they have been victimized by any one of those dynamics, whether it's race or sex or gender or now mental health. You can throw into that boat. So he very well could knowingly be making use of that dynamic in order to come out on the other side of this as unscathed as possible. But I think in the real world, where individuals like you and I can see through that, he looks like a guy who has played himself. And even though he already looked like a clown before this happened, he now looks like an even bigger clown now. And so for me, I'm just saying, hey guys, dudes out there, men, because women very rarely come out of situations like this taking any kind of public heat. This type of dynamic just tends to work to the betterment of women as opposed to embarrassing men. So, you know, I just say, hey, look at a situation like this, guys. Yeah, you can attempt to employ victimhood if you want, but a lot of people are going to look at you and think that you're a clown and that you've embarrassed yourself. So you want to save yourself the public embarrassment of having to even go that route by, on the front end, trusting your gut and just having good judgment and not getting into these situations to begin with. Do not let your propensity for being a slave to vagina cloud your judgment in such a way that you might have to figure out a way to strategize converting mental health trauma into your weapon in order to make yourself look like you're the victim in a situation that you knowingly contributed to. In a roundabout way, I think we're both saying the same thing. We're just kind of coming at it from different angles. Mm-hmm. But I don't even care about Pete Davidson. I'm just looking at the rest of these guys out here, because I think collectively, the entire male population as a group is actively contributing to some of these problems going on in society when it comes to like interpersonal dynamics and relationships. And just having better judgment is one of the good ways to try and sort of stave off the onslaught of a lot of that stuff going on. Oh, wow. So we'll go ahead and move on from there. Good luck to those people, whatever, who cares. And we'll move on to talk about Irv Gotti and Ashanti. So Irv Gotti has been running his mouth a lot over the last week. He was on, what's the name of that podcast? The Drunk Guys or the
Drink Champs.
Drink Champs. There you go.
Shout out to Nori.
Yeah. Shout out to Nori. He's the host of the Drink Champs podcast. Irv Gotti and Ja Rule were recently guests on this podcast, and Irv Gotti had a lot to say about his previous relationship status with Ashanti. So, you know, he goes on to talk about, you know, how he found out about her being in a relationship with Nelly, as well as how the song Happy originally came about. So we have two different clips that go over each of those. We'll play both of them in their entirety, and then we'll talk about them once they are over.
Yeah, and, you know, just for the record, fair use, all right? We're just pulling this from Nori's Twitter page. All right, this is a clip from his own page. We're just playing some news from his own page. All right, so
yeah,
fair use.
Yeah. I can get past you wanting to be with Nelly.
Sounds like you didn't get past that. I'm just being honest.
Listen. At the time it happens, any man,
yeah, of course,
is hurt. Yeah, right. The chick you fucking are in love with is with this nigga.
Country Grammar.
You wanna hear how I found out?
How you found this?
Only on Drink Chat. We saw the documentary too.
Yeah. How did you find out, sir?
I was at home.
There wasn't no Twitter or Instagram back then.
I was at home. Okay. Listen to this shit. This is God wanted me to find out. I was at home. NBA package. I like watching sports. Oh my God, what's this commotion going on in the stadium? We just found out what the commotion is. Nelly has walked in with Ashanti.
Oh my God.
All right, so that's
You want me to play the other one, or
yeah. We'll just play the other one too.
All right, cool.
So that was him talking about how scorned. Well, he didn't. I feel as though he was scorned, and he still to this day feels scorned about that. Talking about how he found out about Ashanti and Nelly. And so the next one that we're going to play is from the same show, in which he is describing how the song "Happy" was originally conceived. No pun intended.
And by the way, again, fair use. All right, because we're just pulling this off World Star Hip Hop's. All right, we're just covering the internet and the clips that are going viral. All right,
yes.
So just some fair use here.
That you guys were most romantically involved. Did that ever trickle down to the business?
It helped her.
Okay, I'm not following. It helped her that y'all was together. That y'all was.
I mean, Happy, big record, right?
Yeah,
I'm so happy. Let me tell you how happy.
Yo, BT, I wrote a check for me, nigga.
Hey, this table feels like
yeah.
So Happy. Let me explain how the relationship and how it worked to.
Yeah, I'm dating at this point.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're together.
Matching watches. I imagine you bought her watch too.
I bought her mad shit.
Okay. Birkins, all that.
I bought. She gained.
Go ahead.
I don't know about none of this either. I just know.
Okay.
So
you Switzerland. Stay out of it.
I'm Switzerland. There you go.
We just finished sleeping together or whatever.
Okay.
I'm taking the shower. I'm in the shower. You know, a nigga be creative after.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Shit, I gotta get comfortable for this
story.
I ain't never heard these stories either. I'm getting comfortable. We got popcorn.
Listen,
I didn't popcorn.
I'm in the shower.
Shit, don't steal my shit.
I'll give you the quick story.
Cool.
You can see the full story
on the Murder Inc. documentary. That's going to be premiere on BET.
That's premiere on BET. I think of the whole track in the shower. I get out the shower. I call my nigga Chink. I'm on the phone. Chink, yo.
Chink Santana.
We get to the studio. Chink. Chefs it up, the beat, everything. Okay. Now it's time for you to write. Yo, I want the shit.
All right, so there you go. So he's talking about how the song "Happy" came about. He's talking about how he felt when he found out that he was with Nelly, that she was with Nelly watching an NBA game, and they showed up at an NBA game together. He's also apparently promoting a documentary that's coming out about Murder Inc. So there's that angle too. Yeah.
BET, yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, the wonderful BET. Yeah, nothing but good things to say about BET. So so there's also the documentary angle too. So there's always going to be some publicity angle going on with this. So there's been a lot of talk about, there's this idea that he's airing dirty laundry, or that he seems like he's kind of scorned. Why is he bringing up stuff from this relationship from 20 years ago? This, that, and the third. Did you have any thoughts on the way he's kind of just become a motor mouth talking about him and Ashanti?
Well, I think you already, hit on the main aspect of this is publicity. He's got something that he's got on the market. I'm pretty sure he has some deal with BET, for viewership or something like that, or just, just being the businessman competitor that he is, putting something out there on the market that generates good numbers. So I think that this definitely has a publicity angle to it. If he said it was in the documentary, it'll be in the documentary, but people have to want to watch the documentary. So to me, this plays into Irv Gotti being, going on a press run, as if this is the late 90s, early 2000s, where you're trying to generate publicity for your album. So to me, this is him just trying to generate publicity for his documentary or whatever other endeavors he's trying to get into, because clearly he's not stopping as a business person. So I think that's angle A for sure. Then I would say after that, it's kind of dicey. We'll probably get into it later, but I'll introduce this concept. It's just the fact that when you're Irv Gotti and the person that you're talking about is Ashanti that everybody knows, people talk about their exes all the time. My exes are just anonymous. You don't know her by name, and you're not invested with her. So when this guy is talking about his ex, who's public and everybody knows her, and he's talking about life things that happened to him on his side of the fence and how he dealt and coped with it, but the person on the other end of it is the well-known famous singer. That's only something that only a small percentage of people actually have to deal with. So for him to take this long, 20 years to do it, I think he was actually maintaining silence and keeping it solid to a degree. And why do it now all of a sudden? Hey, man, when you need money and them checks and you want to be relevant, throw something out there that's going to get some attention. And I think that's pretty much how all of this plays out. But how do you feel about it?
Yeah. So it's interesting how we just talked about how in the previous topic, I talked about the importance of maintaining balance when it comes to your approach on relational dynamics and situations like that. You never want to give another individual too much leverage if they already have a baseline amount of leverage that supersedes your leverage. I think in these types of situations, there's a burden of proof on men that's much greater than for women. Like if a guy publicly talks about how he was in a relationship with a woman and she did X, Y, and Z to ruin it, I think people are more inclined to give the woman the benefit of the doubt than if it's a woman publicly talking about how the dude in her relationship treated the relationship in poor taste. There's a higher burden of proof for men, right? It's like you have to prove that she ruined. If you're a guy, you have to prove that the woman ruined the relationship beyond a reasonable doubt. But if you're a woman, you don't have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the man ruined the relationship. You can just put it into the ether, and most people will ride with you. Because oftentimes women just have leverage when it comes to stuff like that. So people are just more inclined to, if not believe them, then to sympathize with them more than a guy. So I think somebody in Irv's position to do this, he is doing nothing but empowering Ashanti, I think. And I kind of think that he's treading on dangerous waters because he's empowering her by giving credence to the notion that he still wants her, that he wants her back, that he's scorned by her leaving. And so in the event that she decides to go public with her side of it, all she has to do is tailor her message in such a way that it affirms that particular assertion, and she is going to benefit from this situation far more than he could ever dream, even if he does have a deal with BET for his documentary, which I'm sure he does. I mean, back in the heyday of Murder Inc., he actually ran his business the right way, which is he ensured that he owned all of his publishing. He owns all the masters to all of those songs. So he outright owns every intellectual property that he oversaw during those days. So he did it the right way in terms of running the music, in terms of running a record label within the ecosystem that is the music business. He did it the right way. But all these years later, none of that gives him any credibility with respect to this conversation, because all people are going to do is focus on the fact that he is a simping man who is complaining about the fact that this woman left him. And people are going to give Ashanti the benefit of the doubt in that regard. Now, that's my opinion. That's my speculation. I think all day long it'll be Team Ashanti on this, and it'll be, the narrative, if, this ends up continuing to be a viral conversation that is being played out in the media, it'll be Irv Gotti is, the simping, complaining guy who got left at the altar by the beautiful Ashanti who traded up to Nelly. And I think that if you're a guy, even if you're a guy in Irv's position, who's achieved what he's achieved and he's at the level that he is, although he's not at the height that he was back then when they were doing their thing, obviously, I would assume that he's still, substantially well off, definitely far above average. You don't want to be in a position like that and find yourself very much like Pete Davidson, playing yourself publicly in the media, even if it is to sell a few corporate sponsorships and try and gain publicity and some traction for your documentary. So once again, for me, this is one of those things where it's like, I kind of feel like it was better for you to kind of resist the temptation to talk about something like that, because even if it does increase word of mouth for the documentary, I think it's going to benefit Ashanti far more in the long run, because she'll just look like the superstar singer who came out of it trading up from Irv Gotti, who looks like the guy who's just left in the gutter, still whining about the fact that the relationship ended, not in the way that he wanted it to. So that was pretty much how I saw that.
No, and I hear that. And so you gotta. I'm not taking up for Irv Gotti. I just yeah, and I get where he's coming from. So check out his W's here. He looks weird here, and this is why I was laughing while he was talking, because he's Irv Gotti, and he's got to sell this, and as he's just being him, and much like the Pete Davidson thing, he doesn't have an off switch, as we can see. So he's just gonna go ahead. Now he's not a troll, but he definitely doesn't have an off switch when it comes to his grandiose beliefs of himself. So since he has such grandiose beliefs of himself, if he puts on record that, oh yeah, by the way, I was smashing that. All right. If he comes out later, if anybody wants to say, oh, he old and crusty, he was like, oh yeah, I was smashing your favorite R&B chick back in the day. I love that. So that's his W angle there, right?
None of that is going to resonate with anyone who is under the age of 40.
Oh, hey, you know what I'm saying? And honestly, because and I hear that. And another thing is where, this documentary, I mean, the only people that are really going to be watching it are the people who watch Versus, So anybody that was born in the mid 80s or late 80s.
Yeah.
Early 90s might be a stretch. All right. But early 90s people will watch it too. But the Versus crowd, the ones that go to a Mary J. Blige concert.
Yeah.
So those people. So it's a thing where him pandering to that angle of him making himself seem like by the way, I wrote Happy. By the way, I like that song Happy. But I wrote that after I smashed her. And so it's a thing where it's a flex for him. So if it's a whole documentary that he made about Murder Inc., and then he had a choice to make of including his romantic relationship in there, he did that. So this is the storyboard of the documentary now. Oh yeah, this is our relationship with Ashanti here. All right, this is where we first started off or whatever. All right, here's our relationship with Ashanti. So it went through a whole editing process. So him saying this on Drink Champs isn't him having one too many. This is him promoting what he already knows is in the documentary, which he knows is going to get people interested in watching it. So this to me was completely 100% strategic in the sense that, hey man, he's just playing up himself to try to make himself seem, and why create a documentary? I mean, people want to know. All right. But at the same time, the reason why people create documentaries is for public perception and swaying people and telling your own story your way. So there could be some embellishment in there and other things. But hey, I'm the guy who controls it. So I'm the one that's going to make myself look like I'm, Don Juan, Super King. Gotcha. And so him being the egotistical person that he is, this plays right into that. And also it plays into the angle of his ego being bruised by him finding out that she's dealing with Nelly. But hey, man, anybody would have lost a female to Nelly back in those days. All right. So it's not something really to be, so super salty about. But at the end of the day, man, because again, the industry, man, you're dealing with industry stuff. So, but I'm pretty sure there's still some little salt there, as we can tell. And so he has to, air it out. So yeah. I think that's pretty much the line of how he's trying to play this whole thing.
Yeah, I get that. And I'm cool with that. I just, whenever I look at these types of scenarios playing out, I sort of extrapolate them down to the general population, and I ask myself, okay, what type of an effect is something like this having on the general population? That's kind of how I look at it. So I'm not dismissing what you're saying, but at the same time, I kind of think that Irv Gotti is in a unique position to do this because. Homeboy three doors down from you in your apartment complex, who's considering taking similar action to what Irv Gotti did by putting his situation on blast. That guy doesn't have a documentary to promote. He never ran a record label. And furthermore, the girl that he smashed wasn't half who Ashanti was, and kind of even still continues to be. Because low key, she is still cream of the crop, physically at least. Even all these years later, she looks damn good. But it's just, homeboy who's thinking of taking similar measures, he's not in Irv's position. And so, I kind of look at it and I say, hey, man, be careful. We're already struggling enough out here as guys, willfully injecting ourselves into situations in which we play ourselves out, in which we play ourselves publicly. Best steer clear of those types of actions and behaviors. But yeah, I mean, Irv, this type of situation is unique in that there's a production that's being promoted on widespread mainstream television and streaming. And he was once, I don't know if you would consider him a mogul, but he ran a record label at the height of, a lot of people consider back then when they were doing their thing, a lot of people consider that to be the golden era of hip hop. So not everybody is able to have that as the foundation upon which to do this sort of thing and exact their egotism. And so it's just a caution. I think not a cautionary tale, but you just got to be careful. If you're not in Irv Gotti's position, you can't do this and get away with it the way he most likely can. But even with Irv himself, I think everything that you're saying is right, but I also say there is the potential for this to go south, where he starts to look even worse than he did when he initially started talking. So I hope, for his sake, that everybody is on board with this, Ashanti included. Because if somebody starts to feel like they're getting a raw deal out of this dynamic and they decide to go public with their side of the story, now you're exposing yourself to the risk of really starting to look bad. And so you just got to be cognizant of that. Even as smart as he is and as big as his ego might be, he's not unsusceptible to being played by this situation if it goes south. So that's pretty much how I would look at that.
And even back in the day, so am I shocked that he was smashing her? No. And that was at the height of you're smashing people to get a deal.
Yeah. So, that was pre-Me Too and all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it was acceptable.
And another thing too about Ashanti, by the way. So, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I still remember. And so when she came out, the word on the street, at least in school, when people were talking about it and the girls talking about it, and hey, who's good? Is it Beyonce or is it, whatever? Is it, and the consensus always for Ashanti is that she's not an industry plant, but she's industry. Everybody knows she really can't sing. She really can't dance. She's just a pretty girl. And, she has a decent voice and that's good enough to sell. Yeah. And so they had good marketing back in the day. And the songs were good too. And so it was just a good wave. But she was never really like, super whatever.
Yeah.
And so I forgot why I brought that up, but but the whole thing is that, oh yeah, for the whole, you know, industry and stuff. So Irv Gotti, to me, and that whole wave of stuff, she could come out and say whatever she wants to back up her side of the story or whatever, but I really don't think. I think that the people who had their opinion about Irv Gotti before this is going to feel the same way, and the people that had their opinion about Ashanti and all, you know, her fans and stuff, they're going to feel the same type of way about this too. So I think they're both in the situation where I think they're both just inflated people, and the reason why I brought up her singing and stuff like that is because, hey man, I was there in the golden age of all of this, of hip hop and all of that stuff, and R&B too, because that was like the last phase of R&B, and those were like the last bit of R&B songs that were coming out during that time. But still, even then, man, I still think that hell, they probably both need it at this point. So I think they both win in their own little ways, and I think they both. I don't see how Ashanti could take an L, but I could see how he takes one. So
yeah, at this stage in the game, they're both. I think they're both. I think what's interesting about stuff like this is as time progresses and you become less relevant, especially in an ageist industry like music, you start to try and figure out ways to reinsert yourself into the conversation. And so you start to engage in revisionist history, where you start to rewrite how big your impact was and how influential you truly were. You try to rewrite that in retrospect a whole lot of years later. And so, you know, coming out of this, I wouldn't be surprised if it tries to be suggested that everybody here was bigger than what they actually were back then. So, like, you know, that includes Irv, that includes Ashanti, that includes Murder Inc. Because Murder Inc., for all intents and purposes, was just Ja Rule and Ashanti. But it wouldn't be a shock to me if they try to make it seem as though it was much bigger than that. But really, it was just those two artists. The only thing that I will say is don't ever underestimate the power of the Hot Girl Summer Machine. Don't underestimate the power of that, because whatever place you think Ashanti is in the collective conscious of modern day popular culture, it will take nothing from her it would take nothing for her to galvanize the Hot Girl Summer contingent. And it is a very strong and powerful contingent. And that contingent relishes upon the opportunity to shame and embarrass all men. Last time I checked, Irv Gotti is a man. So if this thing goes south and Hot Girl Summer comes out of the woodwork, don't be shocked if we start getting songs where now we're hearing about Irv Gotti and how his sex game wasn't that good, or how he really didn't have money like that, or how some of his jewelry wasn't fake, or you know how this stuff goes. So I'm just saying there's a possibility for that to happen. I'm not saying it will. I'm not suggesting even that it will. I'm saying there's a possibility if this situation goes south. And so in that instance, he will have put himself in position to publicly play himself. And I think all men should steer clear of putting themselves in position to play themselves publicly, Irv included. So we'll move on from there. Next up, we're going to talk about Lolo Jones. Poor baby Lolo Jones. So for anyone who is unaware of Lolo Jones' public persona, Lolo Jones is she's a retired professional soccer player. I don't know off the top of my head what position that she played as a soccer player, but she was big on the U.S. national team and the World Cups scene and all of that kind of stuff. But even bigger than her as a soccer player is her stance on marriage and family and relationships. And she has been very famous and public in her decision to abstain from sex before marriage. So she is someone who is a virgin. She made the decision very early on in life, and she has stuck to her guns that she will not have sex prior to marriage. She intends to only have sex with the man that she is going to be married to. And furthermore, she cares very much about family and motherhood. And so she wants to do it the traditional way. She wants to get married to a guy and that be the only guy that she was with, and have kids with this guy, and raise a family with the white picket fence and the dog and all that kind of stuff. That's the dream that she has for herself. And so she's maintained that about herself for a long time. And now she's getting to the point where she's approaching the age of 40, and she has still not found her dream husband. And of course, if you haven't found your husband, you can't be married. And for her, she isn't going to have kids outside of the confines of a marriage. Thus, she hasn't been able to have a family. She ain't had no kids. And so now she's stressing about it and she's freaking out about it. And she doesn't mind going public on her social media about how anxious she is becoming in light of the fact that she's approaching 40 and she's unmarried. And so she posted to one of her channels. And the very beginning of this clip is the one that you want to pay particular attention to, but we'll let the whole thing ride out. But essentially, because she's almost 40 and she is unmarried, she is now considering freezing her eggs because above all else, she wants to be able to have children and be a mother. So we are going to talk about what all of this means after we play this clip.
I really want a family. I've waited for my husband for so many years, and I'm just getting mad, and I'm about to turn 40. There's a lot of stress on me right now.
I know it's all you've got to just be strong. And it's a fight just to keep it together. I know you think that you are too far.
Blood work came back normal. Hormone levels are normal. So we're gonna proceed
Hope is never
with
lost.
the process of
Hope is never
building these
lost.
things.
Hold on, don't let go. Hey, hold on, don't let go.
All right. So yeah, she was crying, talking about how she still hasn't found her husband and, you know, is weighing on her, and she's feeling the weight or the pressure because she wants to be a mother and have a family so bad, but she's approaching 40 and she still ain't married. So this has played a lot on the interwebs this week. A lot of content creators are using this for content, as we are. So we are following suit. We're doing the same thing, but we're going to provide our take on it, of course. So how do you feel about Lolo Jones and her being 40 and feeling pressure because she hasn't been able to find her husband and get married and have kids and all that good stuff?
I think it plays out bad for her just because of how much soapboxing she does. But what she's experiencing is not unique to her. This is going on quite a bit nowadays, where you know, a lot of stuff got put off. Responsibilities like childbearing gets put off for the prime years of their life to be geared towards their career. And so I think with her, I mean, she can say that you know, she's being a virgin. I mean, I don't know how factual that is.
Let's just take her word for it and say that
right. So let's say that
for the sake of argument, let's just take her word for it.
So she's being a virgin because she couldn't find the right guy. So since she couldn't find the right guy, you know, she never had one. You know, other women who go through this don't go the virgin route. They just go, hey, my career is more important than anything. So they probably, you know, either had abortions or whatever. But there's still a group of women that are in their 30s, either early, mid, or late, that are feeling the weight of, hey man, I want something to call my own. I want a legacy of my own. I want kids, you know, running up to me. I want grandkids eventually, you know, whatever. And so, you know, they start to feel those things when, you know, this time's running out. So I think this is just quintessential. This is like, you know, this is how the story generally plays out. She just so happened to be so loud and soapboxy about it that it comes out and looking pretty wild on her end. But I really think that this is just a tale of many women that are experiencing this right about now.
Yeah, I hear that. I'm going to take a bit of a different approach with this.
Mhm.
So, mind you, my commentary is based upon me giving her the benefit of the doubt and taking her at her word. When she speaks on how important marriage and family and motherhood is to her, and the fact that she is a virgin and has not had sex, and now she's approaching 40. So my commentary is rooted in me taking her at her word that all those things are true.
Mm-hmm.
So with that said, I took the liberty of doing some investigating. I looked into her public dating history, and you know, it isn't extensive. So I'm not trying to make it seem like she has this long list. Like she ain't Kim Kardashian or some of these other celebrities out here who have, right. So she's not like that. She's not one of these celebrities out here who have this extensive, you know, relationship history. But nevertheless, I looked up her relationship history. Now, you know, I won't speak for you. I'll speak for myself. If a woman expresses that she is a traditionalist and doesn't want to have premarital sex and wants to be with a man who is going to be her husband, and that's the guy who's going to be the father of her kids and all this kind of stuff. If a woman speaks that way, I am going to assume that she is going to prioritize meeting the type of man who shares those same value sets more likely than not. Because the idea is if you care about that stuff, you're going to want to find a guy who thinks the same thing as you. I don't think that that's an unreasonable assertion to make. So I you know, with that in mind, I kind of did some little research on her relationship history. So I couldn't find a whole lot because, again, it's not like she's always in the news being related to this guy and the next guy. However, what I did find was there were three sort of dating / relationship associations that were public on her behalf. One was Blake Griffin, NBA player. She talked about how she went on a date with Blake Griffin, and she talked about how it was the worst date of her life and he was a horrible kisser. That's public record. I'm not making that up. So she you know, but you know, Blake Griffin, who at one point was an NBA superstar, right? So that was one that was public. Another one that was public was Ndamukong Suh, who is he was a number 2 overall pick out of Nebraska. At the height of his career, he was an NFL superstar at the defensive lineman position. He recently won a Super Bowl with the Bucks, but he's a star in the NFL. If he's not a star at this point, when he was in his physical prime, no one would disagree that he was a star in the NFL at his position. And then the third guy that she is linked to is NBA, you know, star Jimmy Butler. So what I'm getting at here by doing this research, and she was associated with Jimmy Butler for 3 years, for a 3-year period, right? So she's about to turn 40. In the midst of her dating life, she has been associated with these 3 individuals: Blake Griffin, and Ndamukong Suh, Jimmy Butler. Now, that's what went public. We don't know what didn't go public. My point is there is a consistency of behavior here, in my opinion, which suggests that despite the fact that she claims to be going for a certain type of thing, value-wise, in terms of wanting to find a husband and do the family thing, the white picket fence with the 2.5 kids, the 0.5 being the dog, she nevertheless found herself on the dating scene with professional athletes. And I don't think I am being the bearer of bad news when I say that if there is any type of guy who you can pretty much guarantee you're going to struggle with finding to be a guy who's all about marriage and family and faithfulness, it's going to be professional football players and professional basketball players. I'm not trying to cast aspersions on NBA players and NFL players. There are some NFL players and NBA players who do value those things, but the vast majority of those guys are already married and taken. And they've been as such probably before they even got into the league. A lot of those guys get married somewhere around their rookie year, or even if they're still in college. But these guys who are out here being professional football players and professional basketball players, NBA superstars and NFL superstars, these are the guys who are least likely to be the best candidates for being the husband whom you lose your virginity to and in turn married and raise a happy family with. I'm just keeping it real. So it kind of appears to me as though Lolo Jones, even as someone who says all the right things in terms of what she wants, it kind of looks as though she is yet another woman who may have wasted a good portion of her prime childbearing years being interested in the guys who are the least likely to give her what it is that she seeks in terms of marriage and a family. And she'd have no one to blame but herself in that regard. And I kind of feel like a lot of these women do this nowadays, where they realize that they've hit the wall and the clock is ticking, but they still want the marriage and the family. And so now that they've realized that the clock is ticking and they're up against, in this case, mother time, now they want to pivot and switch gears and go after the 9-to-5 guy, the good guy, the guy who's not a DJ or a club promoter or a pro athlete, or some rich 6-figure guy who is probably a guy who's going to be more likely to play the field because those are the guys who retain the greatest amount of options. And so Lolo Jones kind of, if this stuff is to be true, I'm kind of extrapolating based upon the evidence that I was able to unearth. And given the evidence that I was unable to unearth, it kind of seems as though Lolo Jones was doing the same thing that a lot of modern women do these days, which is when I am in my peak physically and in terms of when I have the greatest window for childbearing, I am going to chase after the guys who are least likely to provide that for me. And then when I get older and I've hit the wall, now I'm going to switch gears and go after the guys who, from a value standpoint, will be most likely to give that to me. The problem, however, is that those guys aren't going to want to accept the fact that you are going to, those guys are least likely to accept you coming to the table with the baggage that you come with, because now you are willing to accept being with them. It's almost like they're the second option. And a lot of guys don't like being thought of as the second option or the last ditch resort. And so, good luck finding this guy as you approach 40. Now, the good news for Lolo is, again, I'm taking her at her word. If she is indeed a virgin, if she is indeed chaste, she has a better chance of finding that than, say, a female like Melissa Ford, who has a body count in the industry, but is over 40, but still wants to talk about how she wants to be a wife and be married and have kids. So she has a better chance than a woman like that. But I would still say that most guys are still going to want to get with the girl who is, between 25 and 30 and not approaching 40, even if they are a virgin, as Lolo Jones claims to be. So she has a high mountain to climb, but I kind of feel like she made the same mistake that a lot of modern women make these days, which is you prioritize valuing the wrong kind of guy, juxtaposed to what your beliefs and your desires are. And, it's best to kind of value those things and go after the right kind of guy when you're in your prime years, so that you don't find yourself making these social media woe is me posts, crying, talking about how you're anxious because you're 40 and still childless.
This whole thing when it comes to the virginity thing and all of that stuff, I mean, I'll give her that. But the thing is, I used to go to church with people who believed that, and they were so hard up on believing that they would get married at 21. They would get married at 22 just so they can have sex under the Lord's eyes and everything is okay. If you really felt that way, you wouldn't be pushing 40. That's my on that. The other angle is, yeah, her dating professional athletes. She can have her preference because whatever, they only understand her lifestyle, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I want athletic kids. I want to, she can have her reasons for why she's doing that. But like you said, I agree. What pond are you fishing in? All right. When you're dealing with professional athletes. If she's so hell bent on being a virgin until she gets married, then and everybody on the internet knows about it, then I'm pretty sure she has a strong enough Christian or Catholic following where she has some evangelical followers who are more than willing to turn down vagina in the world and other places. So why do they don't need sex? They're so evangelical about the Lord, and there's a large amount of those people floating around too. So for her to go, I mean, and the internet's been around for the last 20 something years going hard. And so she's been known, I don't know how long in that span. All right, but I'm pretty sure for as long as she's been known, there's been message boards and the internet going on as well. So for her to not, or conferences or any other area where these type of people congregate. So if you really felt that way about this, then this would have gotten resolved a long time ago, at least when it came to the marriage aspect.
Yeah.
And the marriage aspect with the virginity thing. To me, I think her being a pro athlete, I really think her being a pro athlete played a very large part in her decision making when it came to either mate selection or her ultimate decision of should I or should not have a child within the next 3 or 4 years because I got the next Olympics to qualify for. So when you're dealing with that level of it too, so her wall is different than, girl that work at freaking Wendy's. But at the same time, she has her wall, and yeah, it hit her hard when she finally realized that she put her career over her ultimate happiness, and that's to have a legacy. And I think what's going on here, and for this people, when I was growing up, they used to call them midlife crises and stuff. Midlife crises, they play their way out in a multitude of ways. But what I'm really noticing now is, being up here, damn near about to turn 40 myself, I'm starting to talk to other people that are either turning that age or recently turned that age. And this is really an area in people's lives where they're doing a lot of self-reflection. And because, hey, man, it really becomes evident that you ain't youthful no more, and then you start to really take a life inventory and you go, what do I have to show for myself? Mm-hmm. And she took a life inventory and she says, hey, yeah, I'm a pro athlete. I have this, I have all of that. So I have all these accolades. I have all these trophies on the shelf, but who can I share it with? And that becomes important when you start thinking about your latter years and winding down and eventually passing away. So nobody really wants to die alone. All right. So, and nobody really wants to, well, I can't say that. And so I think that she's just dealing with all of these emotions that's popping up. So she can have her stance on her sexual status to why she doesn't get married. But I've seen people resolve that, but they actually go out and seek marriage because there's one layer of, I'm going to be a virgin. The next layer to that line of thinking is that I have to be fruitful and multiply. And so there's still the level of I have to go find my spouse so I can, do the Lord's work. Nowhere in there did the Lord say, hey, make sure you put your career in front of the fruitfulness and multiply. So she didn't even follow those steps correctly. So, I'm not, it is what it is with her, but, she just speaks to, like how you said, she just speaks to, she's a microcosm of what's going on out here in the rest of the world.
Yeah, man. I think that, I think that you can be somebody who cares about your career, but if you truly are someone who desires family, then if the opportunity to have that comes into play, then, and you really do care about it, you'll put the career in its proper place so that you can do that. And then if there's enough time, come back to the career. We've seen it happen time and time again. Like soccer's a year-round sport. It's not something that's only played every 4 years at the World Cup. It's going on all the time. It's a seasonal sport professionally, just like the rest of these sports. So we've seen instances where Serena Williams has a kid, comes back. All of these athletes having kids come back, female athletes having kids come back. I don't want to hear that whole, I have to choose between my career and a family. I don't want to hear that anymore. To me, that, in my opinion, is overblown. I think that is much ado about nothing. And I think that it is completely expected that women can do all that stuff, manage their careers professionally, and have their children and have their families. It can all be done. It's work. I'm not trying to dismiss it as easy, but it's possible. So I just don't want to, I'm not saying you're doing it. What I'm saying is other people who try to make it seem like, oh, these women are being forced to choose between their careers and a family. No one's doing that. No one's making them choose anything. If you want to have a family and you want to be a mother and you still want to have your career, you're just going to have to work at managing both simultaneously. It's a little thing called life. We all got to do it. It is what it is. So you can miss me with all of that victim crap. Okay, so because I don't want to hear that anymore. So even if Lolo Jones was somebody who prioritized her career, I believe that her greatest sin is in her dating choices. That's where I think she made the greatest mistake. And so my thing is like, why are you dating the men who, like, from a lifestyle standpoint, are the least likely to give you what it is that you're looking for? At that point, it's your fault. Like, I completely agree with what you're saying, that if she was really about that life, she has access via her platform to so many different segments of our population, where there are men in those segments of our population who share those same value sets as she does. And so she had, I'm quite sure throughout her history, she's had plenty of opportunities to be with those guys. I personally believe that given her place as a pro athlete, she wanted to have that with another pro athlete. That's what I think. Mm-hmm. So when she talks about wanting her husband and wanting this, she's saying all the right things, but there's an underlying coded message of, I want it with the guy. I want these things with the kind of guy that I want to have them with. And in her mind, she wants to have them with a pro athlete.
Right.
So there's a level of disingenuousness there, and she's not telling the complete side of the story. It's like when we did the video talking about those two women who were on the podcast saying that they can't be with a guy who isn't an entrepreneur. And it's such coded language because you're using the word entrepreneur in place of you want to be with a guy who has the financial capability to whisk you off on a vacation whenever you feel like it, but not have to answer to a job or an employer. But you're saying, I need to be with an entrepreneur. Okay, well, if it's really about you being with an entrepreneur, then you can be with a guy who is being an entrepreneur, but can't afford to whisk you away on a vacation whenever you feel like it. But when you say, I want to be able to go to Jamaica whenever I want, and you not have to check in on your job, what that tells me is you want a certain type of entrepreneur. It's not just a blanket, I want to be with an entrepreneur. What you're really saying is, I want to be with an entrepreneur who's made it. I want to be with an entrepreneur who can afford to put me on his jet and take me to Jamaica whenever we feel like it, and we don't have to plan for it. That is not the case. That is not the circumstance for all entrepreneurs. And so you're using entrepreneur as this coded language to try and hide your superficiality, because really what you want is a rich guy who can afford to do all these things, who's not tethered to a job. And I think what Lolo Jones is doing here is she's coding the fact that what she was after all those years is a certain type of guy, a guy from a particular stature. And so you're hoping you're hoping and wishing on a prayer that a guy of that stature also happens to be a guy who shares those same values as you in terms of marriage and family. When statistically speaking, those are the guys who are least likely to share those values, because I'm sorry if this is breaking news, but a guy who has options to be with as many women as he wants whenever he wants is less likely to get with a virgin who wants to be married and have a family before she even has sex with it, before you even have sex with them. Like NBA players and NFL players in most cases aren't going to go for that. Pro athletes in most cases aren't going to go for that. And I'm just speaking on this practically. So I kind of feel like her greatest sin was in the way that she went about operating her dating life. And she has nobody to blame but herself. And she's a microcosm of what a lot of modern women do these days, which is that same thing. Okay, so you want to be a wife and you want to have kids, but you're dating the men who are least likely to give you that. What guy in his right mind who can be with whatever woman he wants whenever he wants is going to decide that you, above all else, are special enough for me to just be with you? And I'm not even going to be able to have sex with you until we get married because you want to remain a virgin. How about you get with a guy who's in the church? Like you said, how about you get with some guy who is in some social segment of society who is more likely than not to adhere to some of the things that you want? You're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And, you know, I'm sorry to Miss Jones and other women who are struggling with this, but you are the result and the manifestation of your choices. And it just kind of seems like she, up until this point, has just been making bad choices.
Well, and just like how you said how she's a microcosm, here's the other side of how she's a microcosm. It's just in the aspect of once there's a certain level of women who hit their career bar, wherever they're trying to get, and, you know, kudos to them, and, you know, more power to them. But once they hit this area, they're looking for their males there. And then they go, all right, here's my dating pool, everybody here. And then it's like, hey, everybody in this area doesn't, for the most part, doesn't want to deal with whatever you got going on.
Yeah.
And they're not impressed by whatever you have going on. And in order to achieve such high career things, hey, man, we live in a patriarchal society, right? That's what all women would say. Even a woman who has a CEO job somewhere, she'll still say we're living in a patriarchal society. But since we're living in such a patriarchal society and corporations are built in the image of men, then you have to be kind of masculine in order to climb that corporate ladder. And so while you're achieving these certain levels of masculinity, you are also scaring off masculine men. So once you finally hit this plateau of, hey, I done made it in corporate America, and it's just like, hey, man, well, you're as man can be at this point. And so then once you actually try to date and find, oh, they're intimidated by me, they're this, they're that, and it's just like, no, they're not intimidated. You're omitting too much of that corporate stuff. It's coming out of your pores. You're speaking to me in a condescending tone. You think you're better than me because of whatever, or you think that, you know, there's all kinds of ways that thing can play out. So she put her career at such a high plateau, well, she becomes a professional athlete. And so now she's in this area where now I just want to date everybody in my pool. And just like how you said, it's like, hey, you can't fish there. And so for these women that actually climb that corporate ladder, all right, the hypergamous thing that they once were trying to do becomes kind of invalid.
Mm-hmm.
And then now they are the version of men that they said that they wanted. So then they have to marry down. Just like how high, you know, if there's a real freaking hypergamous situation, the guy is marrying some woman that's not on his scale. Mm-hmm. And so he's marrying down. Mm-hmm. So the same thing goes when a woman hits this plateau in the career thing. So you're going to have to find him at an evangelical church. You're just going to have to find him there, sister. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to find him where the other people have options just like how you should be exercising yours.
Right.
But you're not going to be able to find it in this area and in that space. So I think this also speaks to that type of mentality of, well, I made it here and I date at my level. So no, that's only one level of it. And once you acquire, and here's the thing, man, once you move up a corporate ladder and you're losing certain levels of yourself, you may get monetary compensation for it. The world can look at you externally and see that you've leveled up, but what type of characteristics or what types of things are you closing off that you are shutting down levels of yourself? And so you still have to be an open person. You still have to be a good-hearted person. You still have to do all these things. And so it's a balancing act of trying to balance your career and try to balance being a good person.
Mm-hmm.
And so if those things aren't achieved, then there could be some levels of the woman that rubs the male the wrong way. She's treating him like an employee, or she's treating him like a subordinate or whatever, because he either did this or that, and I don't play that. I don't play that in a business office, and I damn sure not going to play it in my relationship. Well, but relationships are just fucking always back and forth. He's always going to say something that offends you, and you always going to say something that offends him. So why be so corporate about how you're handling the situation? So I really think, man, that when we're dealing with these mentality, and this is honestly, I would say this is like the first generations of women that actually can exercise what women have been complaining about behind closed doors for centuries. So they finally get their opportunity to get careers. They finally have the opportunity to climb ladders. They finally have all this stuff popping. And now we're seeing how the first waves of them are handling it. And they didn't handle it right. They got so lost in the sauce of being career oriented that they left everything else behind. So yeah, man, this is it's sad, it's sad, but at the same time, man, this is where we're at, man. It's a lot of this going on nowadays.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, it's unfortunate. Like a lot of women, what they do, see, a lot of women drink the same Kool-Aid that they claim to not drink. So you'll hear women say, you'll hear women say all the right things. Like, it's okay if I make more than my guy. It's okay if I'm the breadwinner in my relationship. They'll say those types of things. They'll say it's okay if my career is superior to his. It doesn't matter to me. They'll say all of that stuff, but I think practically speaking, the reason why the patriarchal model has always worked is because I do think that to a certain extent, I think a lot of this is nature versus nurture. And I err on the side of nature, in which I think most women, by and large, do respond most positively to men who exude masculinity. And I just think that the way that this whole thing is set up, women perceive a man who has excelled at the top of industry as a form of masculinity. And so they perceive men who have not done that as a lesser form of masculinity.
Right.
So you have a lot of women who have done these things and they've excelled at the top of that particular ladder. And so they look at guys who have not done that as less masculine. And so if you're less masculine, I don't want to be with a guy who's not masculine. Right. Now, I personally think that is a warped form of thinking about the idea of masculinity. But it just goes to show you that women buy into traditional notions of masculinity, as much as they might try to suggest that they don't. And they carry that ideology into the way that they go about their relationships. Because even though they may say they don't care about making more money, even though they may say they don't care about the man being, sort of the head or the leader or having the bigger career, I think there is a deeper part of them that actually does look at that as an indicator of whether they should be in a relationship with a guy or not. And so I think, a person in a position such as Lolo Jones, who has gotten to that point, probably subconsciously perceived professional athletes to be at least the level of masculinity that's adequate enough for her. Yeah. But, that stuff sort of flies in the face of everything that she claims to want out of life. And the unfortunate thing about it is, all of her failed attempts at being able to fish in that pond were not enough to inform her on the decision to fish in a different pond. She nevertheless remained stubborn enough to believe that she can continue fishing in that pond. And now you fished in that pond for 40 years. and now you're at 40, and it's like, should I try to fish in a different pond? Maybe you should. Or maybe you should have already. But a lot of this reverts back to a lot of the things that we look at in terms of traditional masculinity and femininity. And, Lolo Jones probably ascribes to those very same things, and it's come back to bite her in the ass. Because if you were really about not caring about those things and you really did prioritize doing the white picket fence traditional relationship nuclear family thing, then you would have jumped out of that pool a long time ago. But clearly she didn't. And so she's just kind of reaping what she sows.
I agree.
Yeah, man. It's just, it's a microcosm of a lot of ways that modern women approach relationships these days. And I kind of look at our first two topics as cautionary tales for guys. This is a cautionary tale for women. Um, Listen to the inner voice. If guys have an inner voice telling them that they should not be slaves to vagina and make decisions that are ruled by the urge to be a slave to vagina, then women should listen to their inner voice, which tells them maybe I should prioritize looking for a certain type of guy who's going to give me what it is that I truly seek. And if it's too hard for you to make that pivot, if you can't stop chasing behind rappers and athletes and entertainers and, I don't know, rich real estate moguls, if you can't stop chasing behind those guys, then maybe you need to take inventory on how badly you really do want to be a mother and a wife.
Yeah, and I think for her, and again, much like how other women do, like once they feel like they got their degree, hell, their 6-figure job, they don't even have to be that, but they just out here balling and they're doing their thing. They think that's a prize. So I'm pretty sure this woman here, right? She's like, oh yeah, U.S. soccer, I'm internationally known, I'm this, I'm that. I should be able to bag whatever guy I want. I'm worth it. And, I've achieved. And it's just like, no. And just because you've achieved stuff as women, and this has been said, enough on the internet, but this is another example of, hey, man, it doesn't matter what your status is, as a woman, unless it's an R&B singer. It doesn't matter what your status is as a woman. Nobody cares, bro. No one cares. So you can have at it. You can just do that. The main thing is that guys want peace. They want relaxation. They want a partner. And when you're dealing with somebody who, just like how you said, she said that Blake Griffin was a bad kisser. That comes off picky to me. Comes off picky to me. And
she said it was the worst date of her life.
And if he's such a bad kisser, and if he's so whatever, I mean, if you were into the guy like that for real, then you will work with that. But clearly, it's not his kissing that was the issue.
Yeah.
But this is something that she would do, just a complainer. And this is my thing, man. She has this quirky energy about herself that, again, that I'm pretty sure all her fans love, and that's her charming side of her. But man, that stuff be cute when we be kids. And this is another thing, man. Some of these quirky behaviors, like her, she just, this type of stuff, it gotta get checked. And when it's not checked, man, it's still quirky and it's still off. And so I'm pretty sure behind closed doors, she's a little off, a little quirky, a little particular, maybe hard to date. So now she's in the juncture of trying to freeze eggs, have surrogate moms. Her path of being a cat woman is going to continue. Yeah, she had a mental breakdown on the internet, but this is where she's at. And if there is a cautionary tale in this, it's for people to look at her, both male and female, and see how people can get lost in their own sauce. And she got lost in career. Part of her mental breakdown was part of her career. She had to upload it. She had to tell her people. No part of her life will be private. So when you're dealing with these kinds of people, it's just a thing where it's just like, hey, get you a nice person, get you somebody that, hey, they're not so on the fringe, they don't have so much going on. This woman, I really don't know too much about her, but just that whole thing I saw, that clip and all that other stuff, I could tell she's got more antics, and she's very bubbly and animated and all this other extra stuff that people think that'd be cute. but at the same time, it's weird. And man, one day, man, we gotta have to talk about like how people are growing up, like how humor is evolving, and like the dangers of that. And I just remember like my niece, she was watching, my nieces, they be watching Disney Channel and stuff like that when they were coming up. So their brand of humor was Disney Channel. And so my niece, the youngest one, she's very good at the jokes. But her jokes are real Disney Channel timing. They're good, but it's just like, damn, like, what is don't joke like that. And I don't know, it's just weird, monologue-ish. I don't know, it's very strange. And so I just really think, and I just think that what end up happening, man, is that people's like weird, quirky behaviors, their small little pathologies that they may have, they haven't been getting checked, man. And so then you'll deal with these people that are in their latter years of their life, where they're having this level of a struggle with themselves or dating or whatever. And it's because they have those quirky, strange ways of looking at the world kind of thing. So I just think with her, man, I just think that she's just been enabled by her followers, the people that, you know, think that this is cool. And yeah, it just empowered her and, like, use your word, emboldened her to be out here just, not taking it the right kind of serious and only dating in a limited type of pool. So yeah, man, that sad situation, man. But I would just tell everybody that's watching this to, hey, take a step back and review your philosophies, because, you know, some of these philosophies could just lead you in a miserable space. So.
Yeah, I think the crux of this whole thing is who she's been dating. It's her dating choices. That's what I think is the root of all this. Which begs the question, how much are you really about that motherhood and married life? How much are you about it really? Because if you're as smart as you claim to be, you would have realized that there is a certain type of man from a certain walk of life who is most likely to give that to you. And you kept fighting that and kept trying to, you know, force a square peg into a round hole and do it the way you think it should be done. You kept trying to find your Tim Tebow, you know, and there's only one of those guys running around out here. So, you know, good luck to her. I'll say that. But I feel like in this instance, she has no one to blame but herself. So, and just like a lot of women, they're not exact with what they mean. They code it. And then when they get old and they've hit the wall, then they become more exact. But guys are less likely to take you on because now you're old and you've hit the wall and you have baggage. So that's pretty much how I see that. But good luck to Lolo Jones, I guess. It was good content for us. But we're going to go ahead and close this video out, man. Appreciate everybody for tuning in, checking out the channel. If you're watching this video on the YouTube channel, please hit the like button. It is free. Hit the subscribe button for notifications of all content posted to the channel. If you're watching this on the Facebook page, it is still alive. It is still ticking. Go ahead and like the page, share the video, comment on this video wherever you are watching. You can also follow Conscious Approach on the Instagram at Conapproach, CONAPPROACH. And you can also follow me on Instagram at JVWins, JVWINS. As always, appreciate you for tuning in. If you're watching this video live, appreciate you for watching live. If you're watching it as its own video segment, appreciate you for watching that as well. As always, I appreciate you supporting logical content.
Yep, and the name is Dogon SS. You can find me on Instagram at Dogon_SS and on YouTube at Dogon SS. So go ahead and like and subscribe over there. Also, as JB Wins just said, right, make sure you guys like and subscribe to the channel, right? You know what I'm saying? We're putting in that work. You know what I'm saying? And like I always say, don't be too high, don't be too low. Keep it even kill, man. Keep it player, keep it amicable, man. And yeah, man, just keep it chill.
Yeah, keep it chill. Keep it chill. And until next time, we're going to go ahead and close out. Signing off. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll see you later. Peace.
Peace.